The hospital corridors reeked of disinfectant and despair, a smell I'd grown to hate over the years. My phone was still hot against my ear from Uncle Tommy's frantic call about Mom's stroke. 20 minutes had passed since I'd arrived, and already I could feel the familiar weight of Ben's judgment pressing down on my shoulders. "You're overreacting, Savannah," Ben said, checking his watch for the third time in 5 minutes. "Your mother probably just had a dizzy spell." I gripped the edge of the waiting room chair, my knuckles turning white. A dizzy spell doesn't paralyze half your body. The fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across Ben's face, making him look older than his 54 years. He'd barely looked up from his phone since we'd arrived, probably monitoring his precious stock portfolio or placing another bet he thought I didn't know about. Uncle Tommy emerged from the emergency room doors, his usually cheerful face drawn and pale. "They're moving her to intensive care. The doctor says it's severe." My chest tightened. "Can I see her?" "Family only right now," Tommy said, shooting a pointed look at Ben. Ben waved his hand dismissively. "Well, that works out perfectly. I've got that dinner meeting with the Phillips account anyway." He stood, straightening his designer tie. "Don't wait up, honey. These things tend to run late." The casual cruelty of his words hit me like a physical blow. 22 years of marriage, and he couldn't spare one evening for my mother, the woman who'd helped us financially when his sure-thing investments had nearly bankrupted us. "Your mother-in-law is in critical condition," Tommy said, his voice sharp with disbelief. "And there's nothing I can do about that, is there?" Ben's smile didn't reach his eyes. Besides, Margaret never approved of me anyway. I watched him walk away, his expensive shoes clicking against the linoleum floor. Something inside me, something that had been bending for years, finally snapped. "He's right about one thing," Tommy said quietly. Mum never did trust him. The ICU was eerily quiet except for the steady beep of monitors. Mum lay still, tubes snaking from her arms, her face slack on one side. I touched her hand and memories flooded back, her teaching me to bake, helping with Ella's college applications, warning me about Ben's shifty eyes at our wedding. My phone buzzed. A text from Ella. "How's Grandma? Lucas and I can come by after work." I typed back quickly, telling her to stay at work. No need for her to see her grandmother like this, not yet. Not until we knew more. Another message popped up, this one from Ben. "Phillips meeting cancelled. Catching drinks with Mike instead. Don't forget to transfer money for the credit card bill." The familiar surge of resentment rose in my throat. I knew exactly where that money would go. The same place our savings had disappeared to over the years. The same reason we'd had to remortgage the house twice. "You okay?" Tommy asked, placing a gentle hand on my shoulder. "I'm fine." The lie came automatically, but something in Tommy's expression told me he saw right through it. "You know," he said carefully, "Mom made some arrangements. Things she wanted to tell you about. Important things." I looked up sharply. "What kind of things?" "Legal things. Financial things." He glanced at Mom's unconscious form. "She knew something like this might happen. She wanted to make sure you were protected. Protected." The word echoed in my mind, carrying weight I didn't yet understand. I studied my mother's face, remembering all the times she'd tried to warn me about Ben, all the concerned looks and careful questions. "When she wakes up," I started. "If she wakes up," Tommy corrected gently. "We need to be prepared for both possibilities." I squeezed Mum's hand, feeling the pulse of monitors marking time like a countdown. To what, I wasn't sure yet. But sitting there, watching my mother fight for her life while my husband drank away our future, I knew something had to change. And for the first time in 22 years, I was ready to make that change happen. 3 days into Mom's hospital stay, I found myself sorting through her belongings at home, each item a reminder of the life force that used to fill these rooms. The house felt hollow without her constant movement, her humming, her endless projects. "Mum kept meticulous records," Ella said, leafing through a stack of bank statements on the dining room table. "Everything's organised by year, even the receipts." I nodded, remembering Mom's warnings about financial independence. "Your grandmother always said a woman should know exactly where every penny goes." Unlike Dad? Ella's voice carried an edge I wasn't used to hearing. The question hung between us. I busied myself with a folder of insurance documents, avoiding her eyes. What makes you say that? Lucas mentioned something the other day. She hesitated. About Dad's name coming up at his firm. Something about credit issues. My hand stilled on the papers. Lucas, the tax attorney boyfriend I'd only met twice, the one Ben dismissed as too serious for our daughter. It's probably nothing, I said, but my voice sounded hollow even to me. The front door opened and Ben's footsteps echoed through the foyer. There are my girls, he called out, his charm turned up to full wattage. Working hard or hardly working? He appeared in the doorway, designer suit pristine despite the late hour. A faint whiff of scotch followed him into the room. How's the Phillips account? I asked, watching his face carefully. Wrapped up tight. He loosened his tie. Though Mike's divorce is complicating things. Speaking of which, we should review our own portfolio soon. Market's getting shaky. Ella gathered her things. I should go. Lucas is waiting. She kissed my cheek, then paused by her father. Dad, maybe you could visit Grandma tomorrow. The doctors say familiar voices might help. Of course, Princess. Ben smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. First thing tomorrow. After Ella left, Ben's facade cracked slightly. He poured himself a drink from Mom's crystal decanter, the one she'd specifically asked him never to touch. You shouldn't make promises you won't keep, I said, closing the folder I'd been examining. What's that supposed to mean? You haven't visited Mom once since she was admitted. He swirled the amber liquid. I've been busy securing our future. Someone has to think about that. Our future. I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. Like the future you secured with my inheritance from Dad. His hand tightened on the glass. That was a legitimate investment opportunity. That was gambling, Ben. Just like the remortgage. Just like the credit cards. Careful, Savannah. His voice dropped dangerously low. You're starting to sound like your mother. Good. I stood, gathering the papers. Maybe I should have listened to her years ago. Ben moved closer, invading my space the way he always did when he wanted to intimidate me. Your mother never understood business. Neither do you. I understand enough. I met his gaze steadily. Lucas Bennett's firm handles financial fraud cases. Did you know that? The colour drained from his face. For a moment I saw past his carefully constructed facade to the desperate man beneath. You've been checking up on me. His charm vanished entirely. No, but maybe I should start. He grabbed my arm as I turned to leave. Don't threaten me, Savannah. You won't like how that ends. I looked down at his hand, then back at his face. Let go of me, Ben. You won't like how that ends either. Something in my voice must have reached him because he released me, stepping back as if burned. I gathered the last of Mom's papers and headed for the door. Where are you going? He called after me. To the hospital. Where my mother is. Where my daughter expects you to be tomorrow. I paused in the doorway. Don't bother coming. We both know you won't show up anyway. As I drove away, I could see him in the rearview mirror, standing in the doorway with his drink. For the first time in our marriage, I felt no urge to go back and smooth things over. Instead, I felt something new taking root, something that felt dangerously like freedom. The bank statement trembled in my hands as I stared at the screen of my laptop. $500,000. Gone. Not gradually, but in one massive transfer 3 days ago. The same day Mom had her stroke. I clicked through our joint account history, my stomach churning. Smaller withdrawals peppered the last 6 months, 10,000 here, 20,000 there, each one coinciding with Ben's business meetings. My phone buzzed. A text from Diane. Coffee? Tommy's at the hospital with your mum. 20 minutes later, I slid into a booth at the corner cafe, spreading the printed statements across the table. Diane's eyes widened as she scanned the numbers. Jesus, Savannah. Does Ella know about any of this? No. I wrapped my hands around my untouched coffee, and she can't. Not yet. These withdrawals. Diane tapped a particular line item. The timing matches those poker tournaments Ben mentioned at Christmas. A waiter approached, but Diane waved him away with a sharp gesture. Have you confronted him? He's not even home. Called this morning about an emergency client meeting in Vegas. The irony tasted bitter in my mouth. Vegas. Diane's face hardened. Convenient. My phone lit up with an incoming email. From Lucas Bennett's law firm. I opened it with trembling fingers, scanning the contents while Diane watched my face. What is it? Bank notices, foreclosure warnings, credit card companies threatening legal action. I looked up. All addressed to Ben at his office. Lucas must have... Ella's boyfriend Lucas, the tax attorney. I nodded, feeling the pieces click into place. Ben's been intercepting the mail at home, but he missed these. The cafe door chimed. I glanced up to see Ella walking in, her face pale. She spotted us and froze. Mom? Her voice wavered. Why is Dad's name on a case file at Lucas's firm? My heart stopped. Behind her, Lucas stood in the doorway, his expression grim. Ella, honey. Don't. She slid into the booth beside me, eyes fixed on the bank statements. Lucas told me everything. The gambling debts, the liens against our house, the investigation. Investigation? The word felt like glass in my throat. Lucas approached slowly, professional mask firmly in place. The firm's been tracking a pattern of suspicious financial activities. Your husband's name came up repeatedly. He's being investigated for fraud? The room seemed to tilt. Among other things, Lucas glanced at Ella. I'm not supposed to discuss ongoing cases, but given the circumstances... My phone buzzed again. Ben's face flashed on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. He's calling you too? Ella pulled out her phone, showing 17 missed calls. The voicemail notification popped up. I put it on speaker. Savannah, whatever you think you know, you're wrong. I can explain everything. Just don't do anything stupid. Don't talk to anyone, especially not that punk lawyer of Ella's. I'm handling it. I just need time to... I ended the playback, my decision crystallizing. Lucas, if I wanted to press charges... Mom, no! Ella grabbed my hand. Not against your father, I clarified. Against the casino that's been enabling him, the one that knew he was gambling with stolen money. Lucas straightened, interest sparking in his eyes. That would give us leverage. Force them to reveal his activities, his debts. His victims, Diane added quietly. Another text lit up my phone. From Ben. Don't make me do something we'll both regret. I showed it to Lucas, watching his expression darken. That could be construed as a threat, he said carefully. Combined with the financial evidence, I don't want him in jail, I said, surprising myself with the truth of it. I want him to feel what it's like to lose everything, to watch it slip away while someone else holds all the power. Ella's hand tightened on mine. Dad did this to himself. Yes, I agreed, gathering the bank statements. But I'm going to make sure he faces every consequence. As we left the cafe, I felt lighter somehow. The fear was gone, replaced by something colder, more focused. Ben had taught me well over the years, about patience, about timing, about waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Now it was time to put those lessons to use. I stood in our bedroom, methodically packing a suitcase, while Ben's increasingly frantic voicemails played through the speaker. 3 days since the cafe revelation, and he still hadn't come home from Vegas. Savannah, for God's sake, answer your phone. The bank's freezing our accounts. What did you do? Delete. Baby, we can work this out. Remember Miami? Remember how good we were? Delete. If you talk to that lawyer again, I swear. The bedroom door creaked. I spun around to find Tommy in the doorway, his face ashen. Mum's awake, he said. But there's something else. The doctors found something in her blood work. The suitcase slipped from my hands. What? Traces of something. They're saying... He swallowed hard. They're saying it wasn't just a stroke. The room tilted sideways. I grabbed the bedpost for support. What are you telling me? The police are involved now. They're looking at everyone who had access to her medication. Ben's last voicemail echoed in my head. If you talk to that lawyer again, I swear. When did her symptoms start? I whispered. Around the time Ben asked her for that loan. the one she refused. My phone buzzed. Lucas's name flashed on the screen. I answered on speaker. Savannah, we found something in the casino records. Ben's been there every weekend for months, but he wasn't just gambling. He was meeting someone. A pharmaceutical rep. The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. The mysterious business meetings, Mum's declining health, the timing of her stroke, and the massive bank transfer. I need to get out of here, I said, grabbing the suitcase again. Now. Already arranged, Tommy said. Diane's waiting at our place, but Savannah, Ella's there too. She needs to know everything. My hands shook as I zipped the suitcase. She'll hate me for not seeing it sooner. She'll understand why you had to be sure. Tommy picked up my laptop bag. The police will want to talk to you. Let them. I pulled out my phone, forwarding Ben's threatening voicemails to Lucas. I want everything on record. As we headed downstairs, a car pulled into the driveway. Through the front window, I saw Ben stumbling out, his designer suit wrinkled, his face twisted with desperation. Inside, Tommy ordered, pushing me toward the kitchen's back door. I'll handle him. But I was done running. No. I stepped onto the front porch, Tommy close behind me. Ben's eyes were wild, bloodshot. What did you do to our accounts? Nothing you haven't already done yourself. He moved closer, that familiar mix of charm and menace radiating off him. We can fix this, baby. Just call off the lawyers. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. Like Mom's stroke was a misunderstanding, he froze. For a moment, genuine fear flashed across his face. The doctors found something interesting in her blood work, I continued, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Want to tell me about your pharmaceutical friend from the casino? You don't know what you're talking about. But his hand trembled as he reached for me. Tommy stepped between us. That's close enough. Police sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. You called the cops? Ben's facade cracked completely. After everything I've done for you, for this family? Family? I laughed, the sound harsh even to my ears. You tried to kill my mother for money. I never. He lunged forward, but Tommy caught him, wrestling him back as two police cars screeched into the driveway. I watched them handcuff him, reciting his rights as he shouted about misunderstandings and frame-ups. In his eyes, I saw the desperate calculation I'd missed for so many years, the constant scheming I'd mistaken for ambition. Mrs. Carter, an officer approached. We'll need your statement. I nodded, clutching my phone with its damning evidence. I have a lot to tell you. As they led Ben away, I realized my hands had stopped shaking. The fear was gone, replaced by something harder, colder. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was justice. And I was just getting started. The police interview room felt smaller with each passing hour. Detective Morris slid another photo across the table, Ben with a woman I didn't recognize exchanging something in the casino parking lot. We found prescription bottles in your mother's house, Morris said. The labels were correct, but the contents weren't. Someone had been systematically replacing her medication. My fingers traced the photo's edge. The pharmaceutical rep. Sarah Winters. She worked for Ben's company 15 years ago, Morris paused, before she lost her license for selling controlled substances. A knock interrupted us. Lucas entered, looking grave. They've set bail. How? I straightened. He couldn't access our accounts. Someone posted it for him. A casino owner named Michael Phillips. The name hit like a slap. Mike, Ben's drinking buddy. The Phillips account he'd been working on for months. There's more, Lucas said quietly. They're claiming your mother gave Ben permission to manage her finances. They have documents with her signature. Forged, I spat. Probably, but it complicates things. Detective Morris gathered her files. Mrs. Carter, you should know, your husband made a call before posting bail to your daughter's workplace. The world tilted. Ella had just started her dream job at an investment firm, a position Ben had helped her secure through his connections. My phone buzzed with Diane's text. Ella just called. She's been suspended pending an investigation into irregular trading activities. He's going after her career, I whispered. It's a warning, Morris said. He's showing you what he can do. I stood, my chair scraping against the floor. I need to see my mother. At the hospital, I found Tommy outside Mom's room, arguing with a man in an expensive suit. You can't just transfer her, Tommy was saying. She's not stable enough. I have medical power of attorney, the man replied smoothly, signed by Mrs. Carter's son-in-law before his recent unfortunate situation. I stepped forward. When? The lawyer turned. Mrs. Carter, 3 months ago, your husband forged documents giving him control over my mother's medical decisions. I pulled out my phone. Like these banking documents Detective Morris is investigating. He faltered slightly. These are legitimate. Get out. My voice was ice. Before I call security and have them check every signature against my mother's real medical directives. After he left, Tommy gripped my arm. Savannah, he's systematically destroying everything you care about. No. I watched Mom through the window, her face peaceful in sleep. He's showing me exactly what I need to do. My phone lit up with an unknown number. The text made my blood freeze. Remember that investment property in the Keys? The one in your name? Shame if the IRS found out where that money really came from. Ask Ella how an audit would affect her new career. What property? Tommy asked, reading over my shoulder. One I didn't know existed. I dialed Lucas. I need everything you can find on Michael Phillips and his casinos. Every transaction, every shell company, every fake account. Savannah, Ben's not just threatening me anymore. He's trying to destroy Ella's future, Mom's care, everything. I gripped the phone tighter. So I'm going to destroy him first. How? I watched a nurse check Mom's vitals, remembering all the times Ben had dismissed her warnings about him. By using everything he taught me about patience, about waiting for the perfect moment. Another text arrived. Dinner tomorrow, for old time's sake. Just you and me, baby. We can fix this. I showed Tommy the message. He thinks he's still in control. Are you going? Yes. I smiled, and it felt like baring teeth. But not to fix anything. I'm going to give him exactly what he deserves. Tommy studied my face. Be careful. Men like Ben are most dangerous when they're cornered. I know. I touched the window separating me from Mom. But so are women with nothing left to lose. I typed my response to Ben. Dinner sounds perfect, just like old times. The plan crystallizing in my mind wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about justice. And tomorrow night, Ben would learn the difference. The restaurant Ben chose was where we'd had our first date 23 years ago. I watched him through the window, already seated at our old table nursing a scotch. The recording device Lucas had given me felt cold against my skin. You don't have to do this, Tommy said from the driver's seat. We have enough evidence. Not for the attempted murder charges. I checked my phone one last time. No messages from Ella since Ben's threats had cost her her job. He needs to confess. Inside, Ben stood as I approached, that familiar, charming smile in place. You look beautiful. I sat without responding, noting the slight tremor in his hands as he lifted his glass. No wine? He asked. You always loved their Cabernet. I need a clear head to discuss our daughter's future. His smile tightened. Ella's situation is unfortunate, but these things happen in finance. Unless what? Drop the investigation into your mother's incident. Sign over your power of attorney. Things could go back to normal. The waiter approached. Ben ordered another scotch. Normal? I kept my voice steady. Like poisoning my mother's medication? Like forging documents to steal her money? Careful, baby. His charm vanished. You're in over your head. Ask Mike Phillips about the last person who threatened his casino operations. Is that what happened to Sarah Winters, the pharmaceutical rep? Ben's glass froze halfway to his lips. What do you know about Sarah? I know she disappeared 3 months ago, right after Mom started getting sick. Coincidences happen, but his eyes darted to the exit. Like the coincidence of that property in the Keys? The one you put in my name without telling me? Insurance policy. He leaned forward. For both of us. Sign the papers I brought, and Ella gets her career back. Refuse, He shrugged. Well, fraud investigations can destroy whole families. My phone buzzed. A text from Lucas. Urgent. Phillips found the wire. Get out now. Ben's phone chimed simultaneously. His face transformed as he read the message. You stupid bitch. He grabbed my wrist. You're wearing a wire? I tried to pull away, but his fingers dug deeper. Ben, you want to play games? His voice was barely a whisper. Fine. But remember, I know where your mother's hospital room is. I know which nurses take breaks when. Accidents happen all the time in hospitals. Let go of me. Or what? You'll run to your lawyer boyfriend? To the police? He laughed softly. I own half the department through Phillips. Why do you think I made bail so easily? The restaurant door chimed. Mike Phillips walked in, flanked by two men who definitely weren't waiters. Outside, Ben ordered, yanking me up. Now. In the parking lot, he shoved me against his car. The recording, where is it? It's already been transmitted, I lied. Phillips approached, his expression cold. Search her. Hands grabbed me. I fought, but they were too strong. The recording device clattered to the pavement. Well, well, Phillips said, crushing it under his heel. Seems your wife's been busy, Ben. She knows about Sarah, Ben said. About the medications. Phillips nodded to his men. Take her for a ride. Make sure she understands the consequences of asking too many questions. Wait, Ben said. Not here. Too public. The warehouse, then? Phillips checked his watch. Handle it quickly. We have other problems to solve tonight. As they forced me toward a waiting SUV, I saw Tommy running across the parking lot, phone to his ear. But he was too far away. Ben leaned close, his breath hot against my ear. I tried to warn you, baby. Some games are too dangerous to play. The SUV door opened. Inside, I glimpsed Sarah Winter's pale face, her eyes wide with terror. She was alive. And now I knew why. Get in, Phillips ordered. In that moment, I realized I'd miscalculated badly. This wasn't just about Ben's gambling or my mother's money. This was something much bigger, much darker, and I'd just walked right into their trap. The warehouse air reeked of motor oil and fear. Sarah Winters huddled in the corner while Phillips's men kept their guns trained on us. Ben paced, checking his phone every few seconds. The police are at the casino, he snapped at Phillips. How did they know? Maybe your wife can explain. Phillips nodded to his men. Make her talk. Wait, I straightened, ignoring the gun pressed against my back. Before you do anything stupid, you should know about the trust. Ben froze mid-pace. What trust? The one Mom set up 3 months ago, right after she caught you forging her signatures. Phillips stepped closer. What's she talking about, Ben? She's bluffing. But Ben's voice wavered. $5 million, I continued. All perfectly legal. All transferred to an offshore account you can't touch. Unless... Unless what? Phillips demanded. Unless I die. Then it all goes to a law firm with explicit instructions to investigate both of you. Every transaction, every forged document, every altered prescription. Sarah stirred in her corner. They switched my anxiety medication with something else, made me look unstable when I threatened to expose them. Shut up! Ben lunged toward her, but Phillips caught his arm. Is this true? Phillips's calm facade cracked. You used my casinos to launder money without telling me? Mike, I can explain. You brought the cops to my door over a domestic dispute? It's not just domestic. I met Phillips's cold stare. The FBI is investigating Sarah's disappearance. They've been watching your casino for months. Right now, they're executing search warrants at every property connected to both of you. Ben's phone buzzed. His face went ash white as he read the message. They found the prescriptions, he whispered. In my office, safe. Phillips moved with startling speed, slamming Ben against the wall. You kept evidence? Insurance, Ben gasped. In case you tried to cut me out. Like you cut me out of Mum's inheritance? I took a step forward despite the guns. Like you tried to cut Ella out of her future. I did it for us. Ben's composure shattered completely. Everything I did was to secure our future. By poisoning my mother, by destroying our daughter's career, You don't understand what Phillips would have done." A siren wailed in the distance. Phillips's men shifted nervously. "Boss?" one called. "We need to move." Phillips released Ben, straightening his jacket. "Clean this up. No witnesses." Too late. I nodded toward the warehouse windows where red and blue lights now flashed. Tommy followed us. And that trust I mentioned? It's real. But it doesn't activate when I die. Ben's eyes widened. "When does it activate?" "The moment Mom woke up yesterday. The moment she told Detective Morris everything she saw you doing with her medication. The warehouse doors burst open. FBI agents swarmed in, weapons raised. Through the chaos, I watched Ben's face as he realized everything he'd built was crumbling. "You planned this," he whispered. "All of it. The wire, the dinner. Sarah." I learned from the best. I stepped back as agents surrounded him. "You taught me about patience, remember? About waiting for the perfect moment?" Phillips and his men surrendered quietly, but Ben fought as they cuffed him. "You can't prove anything. It's her word against mine." "Actually," Sarah called from where medics were checking her, "it's my word too. And I kept records of everything." I watched them lead Ben away, his threats fading into the night. Detective Morris approached with the evidence bag containing familiar papers. "The forged power of attorney documents," she said, "found exactly where you said they'd be, in the Keys property's safe. The property he put in my name without telling me." I smiled tiredly. His insurance policy became mine. Through the warehouse doors, I saw Ella running toward me, Lucas and Tommy close behind. In that moment, watching my husband being driven away in a police car, I realized revenge wasn't what I'd really wanted. I'd wanted justice, and finally, after all these years, that's exactly what I'd gotten. Mum's hospital room felt different in the morning light. She sat propped up against pillows, her speech still slurred but improving daily. The newspaper in her lap carried Ben's conviction on the front page. 20 years, she said, tapping the headline. Should have been longer. I adjusted her blankets, remembering the courtroom, Ben's face as Sarah Winters testified about the tampered medications. Phillips got 30. And the money? Being returned to their victims. I smiled. "Including your trust fund." She patted my hand. "I always knew you were smarter than him, even when you couldn't see it yourself." A knock at the door interrupted us. Ella entered carrying a stack of files, Lucas close behind. "The investment firm called," she said, settling into a chair. "They're reinstating me with back pay and an apology." "They should be apologizing," Lucas added. "Their compliance department missed Phillips's connections entirely." Mom's eyes narrowed. "You two seem awfully comfortable working together." Ella and Lucas exchanged glances. "Actually," Ella began, "we've been dating since before all this started. Lucas was already investigating Dad's accounts when I came to you about Mom's stroke," I finished, pieces clicking into place. "That's why you had access to those records so quickly." Lucas straightened his tie nervously. "I couldn't say anything without compromising the investigation, but watching Ben threaten Ella's career..." He shook his head. "That's when I knew we had to move faster." "You could have told me," I said to Ella. "Would you have believed me?" She met my eyes. "Before all this?" The question hung between us, heavy with years of protective silence and careful omissions. "No," I admitted. "I needed to see it for myself." Tommy appeared in the doorway. "Detective Morris is here. They found something in Ben's office you should see." In the hospital corridor, Morris handed me a worn leather journal. "Ben's records, goes back 20 years. I opened it, recognizing Ben's handwriting. Each page detailed a manipulation, a calculated move to control our lives. The day he convinced me to quit my job. The investments that drained my inheritance. The careful grooming of Ella's dependence on him." "He was playing a long game," Morris said quietly. "The gambling, the fraud. It was all secondary to maintaining control." "But he lost it," I said, closing the journal. "The moment Mom saw through him." "Speaking of control," Morris pulled out an envelope. "The Keys property. Since it was in your name, and you helped expose the money laundering, I don't want it. Actually, Ella interrupted, I have an idea about that. We returned to Mom's room where Ella spread out her files. The property's worth could establish a foundation for victims of financial abuse, people like Sarah Winters. Using Ben's insurance policy against him one last time, Lucas mused. No, I looked at my daughter, seeing not just Ben's ambition, but my mother's wisdom in her eyes. Using it to help others protect themselves, the way we finally learned to. Mom reached for the papers with her good hand. I'll help. Lord knows I've got time for a new project. We all will, Tommy added from the doorway where Diane had joined him. Looking around the room at my mother growing stronger each day, my daughter forging her own path, our family rebuilt stronger than before, I realized something. The revenge I'd originally sought would have left me empty. But this felt like redemption. There's one more thing, Lucas said, pulling out a final document. Ben's last appeal was denied this morning. He asked to see you. No. The answer came easily now. He has no more power over any of us. Through the window, I watched the sun rise over the city. Somewhere in a prison cell, Ben was waking up to another day of consequences. But here, in this room full of love and hard-won wisdom, we were finally, truly free. And that was better than revenge could ever be.